Namaste and hi. I am coming with this concluding video in which I am summarizing all my submissions which I made in my series number 2 in respect of bank privatization attempts by Government of India. And in this video, I am making a strong case against the attempts of privatization of public sector banks. Here I start. I want to say that public sector banks are like diamonds in the crown of Indian economy, and people of India are beholden to them for the excellent services they have been giving to the Indian economy, and even today they are doing their best, and all these PSBs deserve to be preserved and not to be thrown in the dust. We all know that diamonds and gems are to be preserved. I go by old saying that the old is gold, and age-old institutions like public sector banks are to be nurtured and not to be slaughtered. Let's appeal to the government. Please don't privatize public sector banks. They are the precious diamonds. And don't throw them out for the sharks, those who are desperate to squeeze them for profits and more profits, even at the cost of exploitation of all those who come in front of them. The poor of this country will suffer. They will lose their institutions of their own rights, and they will lose affordable banking and even maybe thrown out of the banking system if we privatize the public sector bank. Dear government, if you are really willing to privatize any of the PSBs, then tell us why. You should tell us why. Each of the bank employees of public sector banks will have to ask many questions as regards privatization of the public sector banks, and we should ask, tell me why. Each one should ask, tell me why. In my entire series on bank privatization, more than 100 such relevant questions have been raised by me, which we should throw to the government and try to persuade different authorities to stop steps being taken for the privatization of public sector banks, and also against the reduction of government stake in public sector banks. I am very much thankful to you for watching my entire series number 2 in all videos 1, 2, 3, 4 and sub videos even from part A to part H, and I have covered the performance of public sector banks right from 1990, and even I have tried to cover the position which was prevailing in the Indian economic scene right from 1947. Now this is the concluding video which covers the entire story of the public sector bank, their performance, and I am saying that I am making a strong case against the privatization of public sector bank. And I wish to say, I want to make a statement that even not a single public sector bank deserves to be privatized. Now I come with the summary of the entire series, series number 2, and I start here. Now government has classified the sectors as strategic sector and non-strategic sectors. But I feel that banks cannot be compared and treated at par with other sectors. Banks are playing a different role for the development of the country, and they serve more than 125 crores of population of India. Public sector banks are working in nook and corner of the country through over the lakhs of employees, through lakhs of their branches, with the extended arms of banking facilitators and banking correspondents, those who are around 4 lakhs to 5 lakhs in number. So they are everywhere. They are all pervasive. Now when we say that India, the state, is supposed to be a welfare state, then the role of welfare activities are to be performed by the government, by the state. It also means by the public sector banks. By all means, the definition of public sector bank, they amount to the state also. Do private banks come in the definition of state? Privatizing public sector banks means nothing but giving up the role of welfare state. To that extent, that is what I would like to submit here. Now, much debate is not required to compare the role of public sector banks versus private sector bank in nation building, and actually no data need to be thrown to show the huge job done by public sector banks. But in this video, some important parameters will be discussed by me. When the reforms were brought in from 1991, since then till this day, PSBs have been struggling, have been fighting, have withstood all kinds of competitions, regulation, different challenges, technology disruptions, and every area of banking. I am not here to criticize private sector banks, but surely I am here with a great favor and with a great bias in favor of public sector banks. I am here to canvass against the privatization of public sector banks. We will have to say that the purpose of nationalization of banks is yet to be served in totality. There is a lot to be needed to be done yet. The state has huge responsibility on its shoulder which is yet to be performed to be a welfare state. To be a welfare state, entire population needs to be taken care of. Is it that the economic condition today can guarantee that entire population has been taken care of by a welfare state? Now, economic misjudgments, economic adventurism of the past or present rulers should not cost the existence of public sector banks. They cannot be scapegoats for the failures of others. In trailing economy, privatization cannot be the solution. Economic problems need to be fixed and not to victimize the public sector banks. It won't pay any results. A bank cannot be left high and dry, and the actions of government about the economy which has been debated today should not pass on the blame on public sector banks. Failure, if any, on the front of the economy should not be attributed to public sector banks. They have done wonderfully best in spite of all odds for last more than 30 years. See the dilemma of public sector banks today. The Reserve Bank of India says that RBI doesn't have sufficient powers to properly regulate the banking system which is prevailing in India. But the Finance Ministry says that the RBI does have powers. Now, RBI and FinMin are on crossroads on many such issues. There is no cohesiveness in two, and most of the powerful regulators. Will RBI be able to effectively control private banks? Let us ask. Let's look to the history of relationship in between the Reserve Bank of India and private sector banks. Now, history has shown that the government cannot have complete control on private banks, and that's why it faces the hindrances in implementing social initiatives of the government. Hence, reducing the number of PSBs or privatizing PSBs will mean complete setback to the implementation of social welfare schemes. The data to show that unfinished agenda has been discussed in this video at the latter stage. Now, when the Finance Minister will begin the work for the budget of next year, that is 2022, it is unlikely to take one off as of 2021 as the base year for its revenue and expenditure calculations. It is learned that like that. At present, the government is sticking to the demand of 12 lakh crores of borrowings. It is targeted. Out of that, in current fiscal, the government of India has already picked up 7.66 lakh crores of borrowings, and the remaining 4.34 lakh crore borrowings will be mobilized by government during the second half of this financial year ending March next year. Now, we will look to the little data as far as the present scenario is concerned. As far as the latest position, as of 11 September, the deposits of scheduled commercial bank, not public sector, scheduled commercial bank, stood at the level of 1 crore 42 lakhs 48,235 crores, and advances of SCB stood at the level of 1 crore 65,417 crores. As against the total deposits of public sector banks as of 2019 stood at 83 lakhs 4,282 crores, while advances of public sector banks stood at 57 lakhs 72,290 crores. So we can safely go by 65-35 formula. When out of the entire banking scenario, more than 65% to 70% job is being done by the public sector bank. Now, when this is the situation, and we can say that the estimated net worth of public sector bank is supposed to be around 3,64,000 crores. Out of that, government has already infused 3 lakh crores of deposit till now, different governments. Should it go west in the hands of private players? Estimated market cap with the latest valuations of PSBs in the market is much less than the net worth of these banks. Who is going to be benefited? We will have to ask the question, why privatize banks? Who is going to be benefited? As it is, the investment of LIC in public sector undertakings is very huge, to the extent of 25 lakhs 4,578 crores. It is helping government to rescue from all types of critical issues and problems. LIC enjoys trust of the people, and since it is in the public sector, it is getting more and more business. Now, any attempts to privatize even LIC by way of IPO and some other measures shall create doubts in the minds of Indian policyholders. Now we come to the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Would the Atmanirbhar Bharat have been successful without the huge role played by public sector banks creating a huge infrastructure for DBT by seeding more than 87 crore bank accounts through 89.58 crore transactions? Remember, 89.58 crore transactions in just 4-5 months for the benefit of more than 40 crore beneficiaries, amounting to rupees 68,820 crores rupees have been delivered to the correct hands. Thanks for the other seeding. Thanks to other seedings, as I said. Besides this, the payment of 59,618 crores has been released for about 195.21 crore man-days under Manrega. Now, what's the scenario? ILO has said that the global labor income is estimated to be declined by $3.5 trillion. In the first quarter of 2020 itself, India is bound to be one of the worst hit countries in this. It's good that now RBI is opposing the idea of giving bank licenses to big corporations. That is why there would be a pressure to privatize the existing public sector banks, because new license would not be available for the private sector. And it is said that more than 40% corporate loans may require restructuring by the banks. Now, in post-COVID, there will be a huge erosion of capital bank. It is no secret. PSBs will need more than 1.9 lakh to 2.1 lakh crores of capital in the next 2 years. Can small private banks, if they are privatized, mobilize this extra capital required? If not, then what shall be their fate? Then tell us why you want to privatize the public sector banks if they are not able to generate the capital. What will happen to them? In post-COVID scenario, let us look at another situation. Capital erosion will take place. With discounts on interest, the issue which is in the Supreme Court, banks will suffer. As we know, something is going to happen, either entire interest or interest on interest. Some relief is bound to be given to the borrowers. And it is estimated that all the banks shall be suffering in their income to the extent of 40% income they will suffer. The things will be difficult for the banks. And see, mainly the public sector banks which are following the guidelines of Government of India, even by suffering the losses, they will be the losers. Now, another scene in post-COVID may be seriously negative, and huge tasks will have to be done by government as well as the welfare state. Can government run away from its responsibilities and roles by way of privatizing the banks? Shall government forget that it's a welfare state? There is not a good case for privatization of public sector bank. Even not one single bank should be privatized. Now, another challenge will be huge, that the job losses are huge. Economy has contracted to the extent of minus 23% in the latest quarter. 90% of gig workers, those who are getting few hundred rupees every day, initially they used to get 1,000 rupees a day, and the situation is also very poor. They need to be given good support. Now, government is exploring the possibility of reducing its stakes in the public sector bank to the extent of 26%. It's surprising. Who will capture the diluted stake? Those who invest will look for the profits and not for the losses. Then what will happen to the poor masses of this country? Will it be truly possible to the government to manage and control the public sector banks with hardly 26% stake in their kitty? Only because the law provides that at the rate of 26% capital, the banks can be managed and controlled. Nobody in today's scenario can believe in this idea, and it will be difficult for government to control and manage the banks. Now, public sector banks cannot be blamed for the present scenario, for the present scene. They have taken lots of haircuts. They were required to take the haircuts to the extent of 6,50,000 crores. Otherwise, bank would have come up in the flying colors. There are so many sectors and industries which are struggling, and that has resulted troubles to the public sector bank. May it be steel, may it be infrastructure, may it be telecom, may it be housing, may it be power, may it be construction. You name the area, you name the sector, and there are problems. And ultimately, the public sector banks are the sufferers. The truth which has come out after the historical circular of RBI of February about its harsh decision in addressing the NPAs, it's clear that government was not in favor of that circular. Now the PSBs are governed by the guidelines of Government of India as far as outsourcing is concerned and are concerned, but once privatized, many jobs will be outsourced and employment will take a back seat, and maybe the quality of services will also suffer. PSBs have been doing mass banking as an extended hand of the government, and the government is supposed to be the welfare state. They are also doing class banking, they are also doing mass banking and quick earnings. They are trying to be profitable. Private sector banks will prefer contractual employees with maximum outsourcing. It should be noted by the authorities that the service to the nation on economic front is not a job to be done either on contract or with outsourced manpower. It needs the team of employees with a conviction and job guarantee. Respect towards institution and towards nation can come through the permanent jobs and not by the outsourcing patches. Now, technological aberration is also a big issue for PSBs. To keep the system protected from cyber attacks, standalone banks will have to pay more than the entire network of PSBs. All PSBs taken together can surely save the cost. The estimated cost of complete upgradation was supposed to be around 19,000 crores as per the last reports couple of years back. One cannot forget that even today, the Bank of India, which is a standalone bank, is amongst the top 8 banks of India, including public sector and private sector bank, and is the strongest public sector bank of the country, and we should not forget that. Now, as a welfare state, the government has to do much more thing. I will try to place what is yet to be done. It can be seen as per the census of 2011. 2021 census will come now. That more than 84 crore population stays in rural India. There are more than 6,49,481 villages, and there are only 50,994 rural branches in India to cater the need of more than 84 crore rural population. And there are hardly 27,821 branches in semi-urban area where the population stays is more than 37 crores, 71 lakhs, 6,000 crores. Now, for the population of 16,344, there is only one single branch in rural area. But actually, RBI says that there has to be one bank branch, brick and mortar branch, after every 5,000 population. Now, there is a need for expansion and not merger or privatization of the bank. As a welfare state, it has to be many things have to be done. Privatization is not the solution for that. Now, who will bridge this gap and open branches in remote areas without eyeing on the profits? Will private sector banks do this? We will have to ask these questions, and that is why we are saying, please don't privatize public sector banks. You will be shocked to know that the recent RBI survey indicates that out of 75,000 participants, only 28 men and 21 women were financially literate. This RBI survey saying, what about others? Who will educate the others? Who will take care of them? Will they feel like entering the branches of private sector banks if they are financially not literate? Will they feel like coming in the private sector banks, in the chaka-chak, all the systems? Now, as per 2011 census, women head 23 million rural households. That means there are nearly 23 million households headed by women in rural India, and according to the data released by socio-economic seen in the census of 2011, this is higher than the previous census. There were only 17 million households headed by women. Now it is 23 lakhs. Now, out of these 23 million households headed by women, more than 53% depend on casual or manual labor, marginally higher at the rate of 51% as compared to the men-headed household. So the problem is there in the house or families headed by the women. Now, history of the bank accounts, we will have to see a little. According to the Indian population of 2011, which states that the population was 121.06 crores. And out of this, 19 crore population at the age of 15 and above is out of banking. This is the report of 2017. So out of 121 crores, more than 19 crore population above 15 of age is out of banks, banking systems. Now, number of adults without bank accounts in India is highest in the world, next to China. Now, who will give jobs to these people? Who will help these poor people other than PSBs? More these people are brought to the national banking scene by the public sector bank, more rural service savings will be brought in the mainstream for nation building. Will private banks do this? Really, will they do this? Then why you want to privatize the public sector banks? As per the last report, more than 19.9 crores, as I said, in eligible Indian had no bank accounts. Are they getting benefited under DBT in Atmanirbhar Bharat? Are we sure that the entire banking system or the government machinery has reached to the last person who otherwise would have been eligible for the benefits out of Atmanirbhar Bharat, but they don't have bank accounts? They could not open Jan-Dhan accounts. They could not open the accounts for the widows. They could not open the accounts of the farmers. Now, who will do the job of searching all those eligible people and bring them in the net? Then they could not open Jan-Dhan account. Who will go for them? Who will address their issues? But I'm sure private sector banks will not be able to do, and naturally the public sector banks, those who are doing all this for years together, will do this, I'm sure. And that is why we will have to ask to the government, why privatize public sector banks? There is no good case. Now, one more interesting data I would like to share with you. Based on the MRP consumption as of 2003-2004, the population below poverty lines in rural area was 32 crore 58 lakhs and 10,000, that is 42%. And in urban areas, it was 8 crore 14 lakhs 10,000 crores, totaling more than 40 crore 72 lakhs 20,000 crore population was below poverty line. Similarly, based on MRP of 11-12, the same figure goes for rural area, more than 21 crore 6 lakh 58,000, and in urban areas 5 crore 31 lakhs 25,000 crores, and so more than around 28 crores of the population is out of the below poverty line. Now, who knows the latest position? They say, the experts are saying, the World Bank is saying, Indian experts are saying that because of the COVID and lockdowns, many people, those who have already come up above the poverty line, they will be pushed back below the poverty line, and that is going to be a great problem to the national economy. Day in and day out, the reports are coming that the situation is going to be grim. Now, as a result of COVID, the experts say that the huge population is being pushed back below poverty line, and government will have to rely upon public sector banks, those who will work with government shoulder to shoulder, take the challenges, and government will have to take a second advice, give a second thought, and they should avoid privatizing the public sector banks, because such type of assignments we can't expect private sector banks to do. Public sector banks are already there. They have been fighting with along with the government, shoulder to shoulder, and they have been always on the forefront. Now, to cater the need of 125 crore population, the number of branches of all scheduled commercial banks, latest position I am talking, rural branches are around 52,320, semi-urban branches 42,249, urban branches 27,182, metropolitan branches 28,024. So totally there are around 1.5 lakh bank branches. Now, one can calculate as to how much less branch network is already there, even we take into account the scheduled commercial bank in totality. When we compare with the expectations of RBI, there is a need of huge expansion at unbanked areas. Are we sure? Will public sector banks will go in unbanked areas, giving up their aims for profits? Then who will go and who will cater to the population, those who are there waiting for the benefits, and those who stay in unbanked areas? You will be shocked to know that the percentage of rural branches has gone down to 31% in 2018. It was 60% in 1989. So 60% to 34%. There is a need to expand public sector banks. No case for mergers, no case for privatization. And last year, government has actually advised the public sector banks to open more than 15,000 branches. The districts were allotted, the numbers were allotted, but nobody knows what has happened to that directive as far as the opening of these branches are concerned by the public sector. We will have to understand that India has the second largest unbanked population in the world. Who will change the scene? Unless the scene is changed, how the benefit will be passed on to the rural poor, how the benefits will go to them, how the welfare schemes of Government of India can reach to them. Who will do this? Only public sector banks can do this. I have no doubt about that, and we will have to rely upon the public sector banks, and that is why we will have to ask the questions to Government of India. Why you are privatizing public sector banks? Don't privatize. We have got hundreds of questions to be asked by all the bank employees to the Government of India. We should ask, tell us, tell me why, tell us why. We should ask the government. And now what is the scene? Around we are seeing that migrant workers are struggling. Urban jobless people are also struggling. SME and MSME are in bad shape. NBFCs and microfinance companies are in trouble. In spite of huge staff shortage, you will be happy to know that as compared to private banks, the public sector banks have financed more than 31,46,402 self-help groups in 2020. And this figure in 2003 was just 2,55,882. So imagine 15 times more SHGs have been financed by the public sector banks. They will be having another shock when you will come to know about the star position of the public sector banks. The employees in public sector banks in 2013 were 8,86,490. And what is the position in 2019? It has been reduced by more than 80,000. At present, in 2019, the staff position is just 8,06,989. Officers are around 3,89,000. Clerks are around 2,95,000. And sub-staff are around 1,21,000. So from 2013 to 2019, we may say even 80,000 staff strength has come down, and the business has been almost, if not tripled, it has gone ahead, it has increased 2.5 times, 2.5 times. Now it is surprising to know that during the same period, the number of employees in private sector banks have doubled. In 2013, private sector bank employees were 2,29,124, and in 2019, the position is 4,76,390. A rise of more than 2,47,266 employees. It is almost doubled. Like private banks are those who are very much techno-savvy. The private banks are all golden banks. They do wonders. That is why government wants to privatize public sector banks. Now, if the private banks are so strong, doing so much business, even then they are able to maintain only 35% stake out of the total finance scene of the Indian economy. Why they want to double their staff? Is it that all staff is permanent? There must be contractual jobs. When within 6 to 7 years, private sector banks have doubled their staff, showing the rise of more than 2,47,000, and the public sector banks are running with the less staff to the extent of 80,000. The staff strength has reduced by 80,000. Plus, State Bank of India is saying that they have got 30,000 more employees and they are offering VRS. I will not be surprised if few more banks will come with the VRS scheme. And how many employees the public sector banks are recruiting through IBPS this year? As I understand, the number is not more than 2,000. Why this situation? Why this injustice to public sector banks? And even then you want to privatize them. They will do their best. They will work within the limited staff, and you will go ahead with a plan to privatize public sector banks and to privatize them. Who is going to be benefited? Now you will be also shocked to know that in last more than 30 years, at no point of time, either public sector bank or private sector bank could achieve the target of private sector of 40%. So still there is lot of things to be done. Any reform measures taken by the government of India are estimated to have been reaching only to the extent of 65% because they are being pushed through the public sector banks, and private sector banks are having a very limited role in that. So one can easily appeal to government of India, Please nationalize entire banking scenario. Don't keep any private banks. I will go one step ahead. I will talk exactly reverse. When the scene is seen, when the people are below poverty line, when so many things are to be done, where is the scope, where is the need for privatizing public sector banks? Let us ask this question to Government of India. Now, the RBI annual report has exposed the sputtering economy marred by low private consumption. Private consumption is low. Asset restructuring companies, they have also asked the RBI to address some regulatory issues, IBC issues. Surface Act needs to be reassessed. The quarterly results of listed companies, they are suggesting that banks may have to restructure significant portion of their loan books under new Reserve Bank of India, Reserve RBI provisions. The early bird results for the April and June quarter show that the companies with their either reported operating losses or poor investing interest coverage ratio, more than 40% of the corporate borrowing will have to be restructured. What will happen to the public sector banks? Together, these companies had the debts to the extent of 10.7 trillion at the end of the March. Besides this, nearly 6 trillion worth of the corporate borrowings is accounted for by the firms that can slip into the stress. So, what is installed post-COVID? When the entire scenario will come out, what shall be the situation? Can these challenges be faced by private sector banks? Who else but the public sector banks can help government to come out of that situation? And again I am telling that the only public sector banks can stand with the Government of India shoulder to shoulder. Now, as the experts say, government has no money, deficit is high, income is reduced, 70% of the loans they were in the red zone areas identified under COVID. And in such a situation, unfortunately, government wants to opt out for the disinvestment, wants to go away from the public sector. They want to wash their hands. Huge haircuts by banks, huge frauds by corporates from many sectors, IBC and NCLT not yet completed and settled, getting extension after extension, disturbed youth because of the job losses, and only 10 lakh street vendors to be financed to the extent of 10,000 rupees. The situation is grim. The situation which is in store is not encouraging. So many things will have to be done. And the haircuts to the extent of 6.5 lakh crores which have been taken by the banking system has resulted into job loss of 1.1 million job losses because of the companies which went closed. They were closed. Now, even then, the PSBs have done their best. Their NPAs in the performance of NPAs. Gross NPAs of public sector banks in 2008 were 40,000 crores 452, and the same in 2019 are 7,39,541 crores in spite of so much of haircuts. They could control the percentage of net NPAs well within the controls, well within the norms. They could maintain their capital as far as the Basel norms, and in spite of so many odds, they are doing their best. In spite of compulsions from government, they are doing best. In spite of competitions from private sector banks and other small finance banks and payment banks and Reliance Bank and all these things, they are doing their best. Their operating profits are increasing. Their staff cost is reducing. Their administrative cost is reducing. Public sector banks are doing on other parameters also, they are doing wonders. Their net worth is increasing. They are performing in spite of odds. Their asset valuation is increasing. And they have come up. Few of them, they are in the profits also. When all this scenario shows that private sector banks cannot compete with the public sector banks, and public sector banks are doing splendidly well, where is the need for privatizing them? Just because government has no money or government wants to wash its hands as a welfare state. The PSBs are always supporting and marching on the dotted lines drawn by the Government of India. Is it their fault? PSBs have considered almost 5 times the number of accounts under the COVID special schemes. 5 times more number of accounts are considered by public sector banks besides private sector. As we know, in last 4 months, 1.22 crore Kisan credits have been sanctioned by public sector banks, and 1,02,065,000 crores have been special saturation has been given through credit cards, Kisan credit cards by the public sector bank. Now we come to the demographic dividend. Demographic dividend is a blessing in disguise, no doubt. Actually, according to me, it is no more that. It is no more a blessing in disguise. It may come out as a curse. And they say that India shall reap the benefits of demographic dividend, and they will give big age over the entire world, over the entire race. Now, the number of working age people between 15 to 60 is expected to rise to the extent of 28 crores in between 2013 to long period 2050. But the rise is going to be there. And who will do for giving jobs to them? Who will do wonders for developing the economy? No doubt public sector banks. So that is why we will have to ask the government that don't humiliate public sector banks, and public sector banks are the real diamonds and real gems. Now the demographic dividend is going badly against us, and unemployment is going to be a big issue, creating unrest all over, and a strong network of PSBs is the need of hour. No mergers, no privatization. Presuming that as on today our population is touching 130 crores, government says that there are 125 crore Aadhaar cards issued. Out of that, only 87 crores of them are seeded with bank accounts. Then what about the remaining population? Either they don't have bank accounts or their Aadhaar are yet to be seeded. Who will bring them in the mainstream? Other than PSBs, will private sector banks do this for Government of India? I would like to share a very different data with you to show that the public sector banks are spending in developing a huge infrastructure. They are incurring the cost. They have got permanent costs, they have got capital costs, they have got recurring costs, and the private sector banks are enjoying at the cost of public sector banks. See how? There are more than 2 lakh ATMs. Out of them, 1,12,876 ATMs on-site and around 97,000 crore ATMs off-site. They are erected by public sector banks. There are around 20,35,214 POS machines. There are around 5.73 lakh crore credit cards. There are around 89.94 crore debit cards which have been issued by public sector banks, and they have set up the robust machinery of ATMs, robust machinery of POS machines. They have got huge number of banking correspondents and banking facilitators and bank mitras. As against that, the private sector banks have not invested much for the erection of ATM machines, and they have gone for the POS machine because the cost is less. And the cost is less, but all the private sector banks are using the networks and systems of public sector banks at very meager cost. Now, when the ATMs of PSBs are huge in number, see how private sector banks are using that network. Who else will address the situation arising out of the highest job losses in highest in last 45 years, even before COVID, making the situation worst? They say that more than 2 crore jobs have been lost. Public sector banks have already considered more than 5.77 crore mudra loans. So 5.77 crore mudra loans, 1.2 crores Kisan credit cards, and so many benefits, and 70,000 crore pass through, 80 crore entries under DBT in Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now the entire cooperative sector has been brought under the supervision of RBI. This is the latest development. Parliament has also amended the law, and the act has been amended. So as a result of that, around 4.84 lakh crores of deposits and around 8.60 crore depositors of this country, those who are having their accounts in more than 1,540 cooperative banks, are in the safe hands. They say in the safe hands, and they say that so 4.84 lakh crore deposits and 8.60 crore depositors. They are looking at RBI, how RBI is going to save. And on the other hand, RBI has been invoking Section 35.1 one after another, day in and day out, and restrictions are coming on cooperative banks. So there is a feeling of disturbance, there is a feeling of frightedness among the customers of cooperative banks. Where they will go, who will fulfill the likely vacuum which will come out of the directions of Reserve Bank of India as far as the cooperative banks are concerned. Now, another interesting point I would like to mention here is that at present, in the last 6 months, the deposit growth is 11.98%, as against the advances growth is only 5.26%. Even today, the people believe in public sector banks and they come with the public sector banks to deposit their money. That is why, as compared to last year's quarter ending June, July, the amount of deposits mobilized by public sector banks are more by 3 lakhs crore. Total 6 lakh crores deposits have been mobilized by public sector banks. Now, in spite of announcements of frauds by public sector banks, the general public have immense trust in the public sector banks, and even then they are switching their deposits to public sector banks. Templeton funds, now they don't have much trust in the mutual funds also, and general public is switching to public sector bank. Now, because of this confidence, the general public is perceiving that the government bank is a safe bank. It will never fail. If the government decides to privatize public sector banks, then where these poor will go, depositors will go, where they will keep their money. It will be a big blow to their trust, and the depositors will lose their confidence in the public sector banks. They will feel that today it's a public sector bank. Who knows tomorrow if the government wants to privatize it? Shall I keep my deposits there or not? So they are scared to keep their deposits in private banks, in cooperative banks, and they are feeling risky to keep their deposits in mutual funds and all these things. So the only public sector banks is the only option left for them, and the only protection left for those people is keeping the deposits in public sector banks. And on the other hand, government is thinking to privatize public sector banks. Is it good? Is it right? And the data shows that out of 23,500 accounts, overall 26,610 accounts are fully protected under DICGC. Now, out of total amount accessible, that 1,34,88,000 crores, out of that 36,96,000 crores are insured. So big amount is insured. The government deposits and all these deposits, corporate deposits, there is no need for insurances as such. But the deposits of general public are insured. So deposit in the maturity bucket from 1 year to 3 years are to the extent of 38,73,000 crores. And it is almost 50% of the total deposits kept by the public in the fixed deposit. All these deposits are locked for the period of 3 years. That because the general public is enjoying the faith and trust in the public sector banks. As it is, the deposit growth is hardly 7.9%, which is to be 32%. Sometimes in 2004-05 it is to be 24%. Thus, the saving has been disincentivized. The rate of interest on deposits are already going down. The private banks are not paying handsome interest, but they are charging the customers. Their services are costly. In spite of that, the general public is coming with the public sector bank with great hope. How can we privatize the public sector banks? We will have to ask the question to the government. The other point I would like to make here that FRDI bill was withdrawn because of the government, because of the pressure from the general public. But I consider that the same bill has come in a new avatar with the name Financial Sector Development Regulation and Resolution Bill 2019. It has been planned to be pushed. Though there is no bailing clause in the new bill which is coming in a new avatar, at the end of the day, the provisions are somewhat the same about the resolution pattern. This bill is being brought and banks are being privatized. What kind of message government wants to give? Though there is no bailing clause, so banks, on one hand, government wants to privatize and bring in such bills, those who plan the resolution in case of failure of the banks or financial institutions, and in that case, even the depositors' money shall be at stake. Now, PSBs have added more than 1 crore digital apply initiative taken by DFS post-COVID. Who else has done this? Have private sector banks they have done anything about that? they have come exceedingly well in case of ease of doing pattern of Government of India. So all round efforts they are taking. The another interesting story which has come out in the RBI report is that the currency note of denomination of 2000 are out of the system. They say the number of 2000 currency notes in circulation has come down from 33 lakh pieces to 32 lakh pieces, and the latest position is that the number has come down to 27 lakh pieces. So from 33 lakh pieces, 27 lakh pieces are in circulation, so around 6 lakh pieces of 2000 rupee note are out of the system today. Is there a case of demonetization of 2000 notes where the money has gone? Are we there? And instead of addressing this issue, why things are being planned to private to public sector banks? The another situation I would like to mention before you, that WhatsApp is coming with 40 crore account holders and it is waiting for the sanction for a payment gateway with a state-of-art technology. The robust network of PSBs which open crores of number of accounts across the nation will lose their business because WhatsApp account holders and bank account holders will be the same. The level playing field for the public sector banks will be disturbed with this. On other hand, Jio and Aadhaar Mobile has already creating waves. As they say that 7 transactions out of 100 transactions are taking place in the branches of State Bank of India. Only 7 out of 100. The entire business has gone out. Yono app, which is being run by the Reliance, is creating waves and the business of the branches is coming down. As indicated, if government is bent upon to keep only 4 public sector banks in public sector, because strategic sector they will keep only 4 companies in strategic sector as they have been saying, presuming that government keeps only 4 banks in public sector, then each bank will have 2,01,745 employees, out of which 99,000 will be officers. In each bank, each of the 4 public sector banks will have to cater deposits to the tune of 20,76,000 crores, advances of 14,43,000 crores. Similarly, each of those 4 public sector banks will have more than 35,000 branches. Is it good size for any one entity to be effective? Can an entity with a 2 lakh staff, 35,000 branches, more than 35 lakh crores of business to be handled? So 1 lakh crore business maybe per branch. Can any management handle such network? And then why government should think of keeping only 4 banks in public sector? So there is no case for further merger. There is no case for privatization of public sector banks. And all these questions we will have to ask to the Government of India, we will have to ask to the authorities. Now by 2021, they say that the growth in credit will be snatched by the private sector banks. So the public sector banks will do business as directed by Government of India and the credit will be snatched by the private sector banks. PSBs will do mass banking and private sector banks will take over the cream. Then instead of supporting public sector banks, why government should plan to privatize this bank? The another important aspect is that they are saying that the cyber security business worth $40 billion will be there as of 2025. And the business to the tune of 35 lakhs to 40 billion worth of cyber security, it shall be 10 times more than the business of IT industry in 2025. This is another asset which will have to be taken into account by the banking system, by the stakeholders, by the regulators. So bank need to look to create 1 million cyber security professionals. Can private sector banks do this? Will public sector banks not need the support of Government of India to create so many jobs for cyber security? Who else other than the public sector banks with the support of government can withstand these challenges of cyber security to keep the depositors' money in safe hands? So public sector banks in fact will need the support from Government of India, and that is why there is no case for privatization of public sector bank. Now the experts are saying that at present there is no case of privatization. It is not politically feasible, it is not economically feasible. So the plan B is being also talked by the experts, and they say government should restore investor confidence by making appointments of CEOs, appointments of board members free of government interferences. They say the government should cease to use the public sector banks for political and social purpose. Give complete freedom to public sector banks and see how they come up with the flying colors, how best result they will give. Avoid making Banks Board Bureau a farce with a similar pool of candidates and selecting out of the same candidates coming and appearing again and again. Similarly, the pattern needs to be changed, and the control of the ministry, invisible hand of the ministry on the heads of the public sector bank, it should go. Then only the public sector banks will be able to come with the flying colors, and there won't be any need to privatize them. Now, different authorities are giving different suggestions. That is why there is a confusion in the masses. It is increasing, and media people are flashing the news as if everything is over, things are final, and that is creating problems in the minds of bank employees, in the minds of general customers, in the banks of businessmen, and these unconfirmed news items are creating waves in the minds of the population of India. Let us see who is suggesting what. RBI, Niti Aayog, Banks Board, Finance Ministry, ex-RBI governors, they are tossing different ideas as per their free will. And the ideas, they are getting published in media in such a way that things are over, things have been finalized. Let us see what are the ideas which are being tossed. One says privatization of 6 standalone banks should be done. The other says reduce the government stake in all the 6 standalone banks. Another authority says sell all the 6 standalone banks. Then some people, they say that India Post and RRB should be brought together under one unit. Some experts say that government should reduce its stake in all the public sector banks to 26% or 33%. Then some are saying allow more FDIs in public sector banks. Then some people are saying keep only 4 public sector banks. And some people are saying that the stale by government in the public sector bank is overdue. See, there are 10 different options suggested by the authorities like Niti Aayog, Reserve Bank of India, ex-governors, Finance Ministry, BBB. So what is going on? Who has created all this mess? And things need to be cleared. To conclude, I can only say that welfare state has a big role to play in overall development of national population, upgradation of national population till last mile, and welfare state cannot leave its duty in between unfulfilled. So privatizing any public sector bank or reducing a stake in any of the public sector below 51% will, according to me, will amount washing hands over its duty as a welfare state towards the nation building when the present crisis need financial upliftment of each one in the country. It's a non-ending process. It's a ever-going process. It can't be stopped. It's the job of the public sector banks with the support of government to come up and help the Indian population, help all the sectors to come up out of this crisis. And I can, with little pain, I would like to mention here that it's not a cup of tea of private sector banks. I'm not blaming them, but surely I feel it's not a cup of tea of private sector banks. And I feel they also, private sector banks also don't wish to come forward and take more responsibilities. They are busy with their plans, profits and more profits, exploitation and more exploitations of employees, and to some extent their own customers by way of service charges. So in the present scenario, post-COVID scene, government cannot wash its hands and leave PSBs high and dry. Who will support them capital and ask them to be on their own legs without any support? Privatization of PSB will shake the trust of common man in banking system, and the common man will doubt the intentions of the government. That would be a very bad for any ruling government, and much more can be spoken on this issue. Already around 50 minutes I have spoken on this. So still much more can be spoken in favor of public sector banks, but I would like to stick myself here. We have to complete the debate somewhere. So again, I would like to emphatically state that PSBs are the wheels of transformation with well-developed infrastructure, with well-settled rules and practices, with studied and well-settled branch network, studied with gem of the dedicated employees, experienced and matured management with the roots deep in the Indian soil. They have again and again created history by taking active part in complete transformation of the economy, and we cannot forget their role. Now, PSBs have come up with strong dedicated workforce to take out our nation out of every crisis, financial, natural or God sent, or the crisis created by acts of gods. Believe in public sector banks, rely on public sector banks. In fact, I would like to say that looking to the challenges ahead, there is a good case for nationalization of entire banking sector in India and channelize the efforts of the government and give directions to all the national savings for eradication of poverty and taking the nation to 5 trillion economy in the shortest possible time. When we have to achieve the same, there is no good case for privatization of any of the public sector bank. With this, I appeal to all bankmen, I appeal to all the people, those who are aware of all these things. We will have to question Government of India. Tell us why. Tell me why you want to privatize public sector banks. Please don't do it. Please don't do that. It is not in the national interest. With this, I conclude. Thanks for watching my video. Thank you. Thank you so much.